everybody. Welcome to The World This Week. The U.S. President Barack Obama's historic Iran deal speech sets the stage for the battle in Congress. The first round of 17 Republican presidential candidates faced off. Who were the winners and who were the losers? And the end of an era 3.5 million people watched as a Daily Show host Jon Stewart signs off for the last time. These are some of the issues we will touch upon this Sunday. We're joined now by Professor Yossi Shane of Tel Aviv University and Georgetown University. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
And I-24 News correspondent Shai Ben-Ari. Shai, thank you for joining us.
No problem.
17 Republican candidates into two different debates. Who are the winners and losers? Who's the winner? Let's start with that.
I don't think there's much doubt about Trump's performance. I think he impressed, despite all the controversy. There was more controversy in the aftermath, of course, with the certain comments he made about the Fox host, Megyn Kelly. I think in the context of the debate itself, he did very well. He actually managed to tone it down a bit. No comments that were too outrageous in the context of the debate itself. He avoided some of the traps that were set for him, and I think he stood out. He is a refreshing voice when you talk about the conservative crowd in the U.S., and he stands out from a lot of the cookie cutter sort of molds that you see. A lot of these candidates are too similar themselves, a problem perhaps by definition when you talk about conservative candidates.
Professor Shane, any losers that you can say right now? It's a little too early, of course, before the actual elections, but there are some people that maybe we had high expectations. Jeb Bush, for example?
I wouldn't go that way. I would say it's a very early stage. Certainly Donald Trump has tremendous visibility right now. He's a media guy. And you have to keep in mind that this is in Fox News. People are watching. There is a hardcore, but this is a very early stage. So I wouldn't bet on anything. But nevertheless, it's an interesting case of Donald Trump sort of showing himself to be a viable candidate as we speak. Maybe more than that. I would hold my judgment.
Let's take a quick listen to just one of his sentences that got people riled up or in support, depending on what side of the fence you're on. Let's take a listen.
You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account...
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
No, it wasn't.
I've been challenged by so many people, and I don't frankly have time for total political correctness. And to be honest with you, this country doesn't have time either.
Is the problem political correctness? This is someone, of course, that everyone was betting against, and he spoke more than any other candidate at this debate.
This is already to show you how smart he is with the media. For example, when the first question was asked, who among the candidates is not going to run if he loses to all the other Republican candidates? And he's the only one who said, no, I will run. Basically gave him free speech, sort of like around sort of like the panel, to show himself to be, I'm confident that I should win the election. It's not about the Republican sort of like debates. It's something greater than that. So he certainly exudes what many people in the American public on the right wing believes, that this country is going in a wrong direction.
But he's also taking a step back from the actual Republican Party, the historical Republican Party.
Right. I think it was a very smart move of him to raise his hand when that question was asked. It was a bit of a layup, let's say, that maybe catered to his own strengths, let's say. But he really did manage to set himself apart from the long line of other candidates. When you talk about the other candidates, I think Jeb Bush, you could say he missed an opportunity here because his time, in a sense, is running out for him. This is the former favorite. He's no longer that. His campaign, you could say, is slipping backwards. This was an opportunity, let's say, for him to reassert himself as at least the major alternative or rival of Trump. He did not stand out. I think others did better than him. For example, Carly Fiorina in the previous debate. I think also John Kasich was very impressive, as well as Mike Huckabee, who was an old hand. All these guys sounded more confident than Jeb Bush, who often stuttered on certain occasions. He certainly did not stand out as one amongst many. Let's
take a listen to Carly Fiorina. Of course, she was in the previous debate, the earlier debate, if you will, and the only female candidate out of a candidate of 17. Let's take a look.
On day one in the Oval Office, I would make 2 phone calls. The first one would be to my good friend Bibi Netanyahu to reassure him we will stand with the state of Israel. The second will be to the Supreme Leader of Iran. He might not take my phone call, but he would get the message. And the message is this: until you open every nuclear and every military facility to full, open, anytime, anywhere, for real inspections, we are going to make it as difficult as possible for you to move money around the global financial system. I hope Congress says no to this deal, but realistically, even if they do, the money is flowing. And when America does not lead, the world is a dangerous and a tragic place. This is a bad deal. Obama broke every rule of negotiation. Yes, our allies are not perfect, but Iran is at the heart of most of the evil that is going on in the Middle East through their proxies.
Professor Shane, she was definitely a surprise for many viewers at home. Nobody expected this kind of rhetoric coming from her.
Not surprised to me.
Okay.
I think she's a brilliant lady. It's really interesting that she's the only lady running among the Republicans, and that's sort of like something, she stands out, and at the same time also shows that the Republicans perhaps are outdated in terms of their sort of like range. The range has to be different. American range has been changing dramatically, ethnically, gender, all of these issues, and we have seen it with the Supreme Court even. Even the Supreme Court of the United States with Roberts has moved to a different direction. And that is the edge that the Democrats right now have over the Republicans. On the other hand, Trump is representing sort of the old-style America, or I don't know if it's the old-style America. Corporate America, with the rhetoric that this is not a country of social justice only. This is a country that has to stand out as a superpower. And Fiorina is a refreshing voice in that respect, that she represents the conservative, a very smart lady with tremendous credentials at HP. So she is certainly a voice one has to listen more and see to what extent she will be advancing in the polls. Again, too early to tell, but she impresses me.
And if we do talk about the Democratic side, there was a female leading that side, Hillary Clinton, but it's not. It's probably too early to say that she's going to be the definite Democrat nomination. We're hearing rumors about Biden and, of course, Bernie Sanders and so forth. What's her popularity, would you say, looking at the Republican debate, looking at Fiorina, of course? She has a lot to owe up to.
In terms of the poll, she's still doing fairly well, beating most of the Republican candidates, though not often by a large margin. I would say she's still the overall favorite, but certainly within the Democratic camp, there's a lot of talk right now about the vice president perhaps considering, or apparently very much considering, a bid for the presidency himself. Apparently this comes as the dying wish of his son, Beau Biden, who apparently called on his father to run and to help the country avoid or revert back to Clinton policies or Clinton values in favor of Biden values. Actually, the relationship between Clinton and Biden within the White House when she was Secretary of State was thought to be fairly good, but it may be the case that he will challenge her. We'll have to see. Professor
Yossi Shane, thank you for joining us. Shai Ben-Ari, thank you for joining us, and we'll be back with more. September 17th, that's the day Congress will be deciding whether to back the U.S. President Barack Obama's deal with Iran, or the P5+1 agreement. And the battle has already started in Washington and in Jerusalem. I-24 News diplomatic correspondent Tal Shalev joins us from New York. Tal, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Yael, for having me.
President Obama's speech at American University last week will not only be remembered for its strong arguments in favor of the Iranian deal. So what does it really tell us about the U.S.-Israeli relations?
Well, first of all, we might say that Obama was making what he termed probably one of the most historic speeches in all of his presidency. He gave this speech at American University, the same venue where President Kennedy gave a similar speech 52 years ago, arguing on the benefits of a nuclear test ban treaty. President Obama basically gave, his arguments on the merits of diplomacy and the caution from war. Repeated many of his arguments in favor of the Iran deal. Not much new talking points in that respect, but yes, as you mentioned, it was probably one of the harshest speeches, the most blunt speeches we've ever heard in the Israel-U.S. relationship. We do know that Obama and Netanyahu have a very bad relationship, but we have never heard it so outspoken and so publicly. And basically and essentially, Obama singled out Israel as the only country who publicly opposes the Iran deal. And he singled out Netanyahu. He said he is essentially wrong on the Iran deal. And one of the most troubling sentences he said, especially from the Jewish community's point of view here in the United States, was the sentence that he said that he has to do what he believes is right for the U.S. national security, disrespectful of any frictions this creates with Israel. And for many Jews here in the United States, that sentence actually created a big sense of uncomfort and miscomfort, because it actually brings up the question of double loyalty. And the fact is that opponents of the deal do not feel they are asking the American president to do something opposing the American national interest. They're just asking him to do something that will take into account Israel's concerns.
Tal Shalev, I-24 News diplomatic correspondent in New York, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Yael.
After 16 years of what some call pure snark and others say was sheer accountability, Jon Stewart exited The Daily Show last week, ending an era for the 3.5 million dedicated viewers that tuned in. Joining me now is Ruth Margo, a contributing writer for The New Yorker. Ruth, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Let's start from the end. What will be missing next week when Jon Stewart doesn't host The Daily Show?
Next week, what will be missing? I think, it's funny. The events of this past week almost illustrate just how important Jon Stewart has become here. First of all, we had the Republican primary last night, and suddenly there won't be Jon Stewart to sort of unpack what was happening and kind of show the little hypocrisies and the little moments that he has become so known for. And then there are more, serious news like the Iran agreement and, whether that will pass Congress. And you won't have this, you won't have Jon Stewart kind of pouncing on whatever, what the politicians are saying and the way, some of them might be trying to spin the news or, kind of use it to their advantage. And so I think more than anything, we have real life news just illustrating how important he has become.
Then what made him so popular?
I think what made him so popular on a personal level, first of all, was this extreme honesty he had, and this irreverence, and this idea of holding the media world and the politicians' feet to the fire, and really exposing sort of deeper truths. But he did it without coming across as kind of preachy or sanctimonious. He in a way he was this sort of everyman, which is of course deceptive because he wasn't. He was extremely intelligent. He is extremely intelligent, extremely smart. And so, so that's on the personal level. And then, of course, I think he also came on at a time in which the way we consumed news was changing. And so you had this broadcast news was suddenly on the decline, and there was this rise of the 24-hour news cycle. And Stewart really exposed the kind of, the spectacle element of it. And what he saw as the media kind of favoring soft news over more hard-hitting news. And this has become sort of invaluable for young people and for TV viewers, not only in the US, but really worldwide.
But he wasn't always this rock star of accountability, and he wasn't without his critics.
It's interesting, he came on, so he first started in 1999, and he replaced this, the former host, Greg Kilborn, who was this kind of sports anchor, sort of smug guy who favored these one-liners. And then Jon Stewart at first sort of did a little bit of that, and he had a hard time finding his voice. But then I think what changed was two events, happened that really made The Daily Show what it was. And the first was the disputed election of 2000. The Gore v. Bush, and he had this segment, the Indecision 2000, which he then repeated in following elections, where he dissected the news, dissected what was going on with the election, with people really feeling like this was sort of the news was slipping under them, and he was very good at sort of exposing that. And then the second event that happened was the attacks of September 11th. And I think it was the first time in which he came on the air and he had a very somber segment, not, very serious. It wasn't just for the laughs, and you got a sense that he was really becoming this kind of moral compass. It wasn't just about, putting out these jokes and making people laugh, but also something he was getting after. He was after something more serious and after something that's more reflective and a little more true to our times. He did this serious segment in which he came on and he talked about living in New York, living downtown, being able to see the Twin Towers from his home, and suddenly not having that anymore, and what that meant to him, and through him what it also meant to to a young generation.
Ruth Margo, contributing writer for The New Yorker there in New York. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Yael.
This has been The World This Week. We'll see you here next Sunday. Have a great week.